live now on the Conversations That Matter podcast. I'm your host, John Harris. We're going to talk about some local politics or state politics, if you will, today for a state that I love deeply. I lived there for 3 years. I would love to be able to move back, actually, to Virginia, but Virginia's not in the best political situation right now. And it seems like they're going the way of New York and California and other states where there used to be a Republican resistance, but then when the Democrats got strong majorities, they slammed the door right behind them. And it seems like Virginia's going that direction. And I'm actually shocked to see in such a short period of time how many crazy, radical proposals are not just being proposed, but passed by the legislature for the governor's signature. So we're going to talk about the situation there and then whether or not there is any hope, what can be done. And for that conversation, which I think is important for everyone in the country, we have with us Tommy Kelley, good friend of mine. He's the former chair of the Augusta County Republicans, former chair of the Lynchburg Young Republicans. He was an advisor to Pete Snyder, and he is also from the Lynchburg area. And we also have with us Tyler Turner, who is the political director for the Lynchburg Republican Committee. So thank you both for being on with me. I really appreciate you allowing us to pick your brain on this situation. So I'll start with you, Tommy. You and I have a bit of a story, I guess. We both were supportive of Pete Snyder to some extent. I mean, I was more against Glenn Youngkin, I suppose, than I was supportive of Pete Snyder, but he was more the guy that I thought would be preferable. Yeah. And Glenn Youngkin won. I mean, this is the previous governor of Virginia, Republican. I don't know if the genesis of where things went wrong is there or not, but I knew he had some woke tendencies and wasn't a conservative Republican in my estimation. And now here we are, right? This was supposed to be the move that would turn Virginia red, and we were going to get all this stuff done. I can't think of any or a lot of good positive things that came out of that. And now, in a matter of weeks, we are seeing negative things happen at a lightning speed beyond the full term of Glenn Youngkin. So any reflection on that and the genesis of all of this?
This goes, as far as the division, what happened in Virginia, I would say it goes back to 2012, 2013. There was a split in the RPV between two men, Ken Cuccinelli and Bill Bowling, and for whatever reason, it just got ugly. And I mean, the pettiness on both sides have, I think, destroyed the team from the inside out, and we are where we're at because of that. We haven't had very good leadership, in the RPV for years. Our last chairman's a good friend of mine, Mark Peake. He's a senator. A lot of people were saying some pretty nasty stuff about him, but it wasn't Mark's fault. I think someone, the previous chairman before him, Rich Anderson, you know, had a lot to do with starting a dumpster fire, and he tossed it on Mark's lap. That's just my opinion. And it might not even have been Rich Anderson's fault. I think there's just a lot of bad decisions, and on our side, there's the infighting in the RPV, the local Republican units is unreal. And we are where we're at because of that.
I wanted to break the podcast up into three parts. The first is where things went wrong, and then how bad really is it, and then what can be done to fix it. As far as things going wrong, the Virginia Republicans seem to be very unpopular. I don't know if that's because they pick unpopular candidates, but this was a blowout, and it shouldn't have been. Like your attorney general was talking about how like he wanted to murder, or he was okay if the kids of his opponent were killed. So I'm kind of curious about why is that? Because Glenn Youngkin did win. So what happened?
Well, and once again, this is just my personal observation. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to be criticized for any takes that I do, but this is my personal observation of Virginia politics. Number one, you have Washington, D.C. Northern Virginia basically is a bunch of individuals who work in Washington, D.C. When you think of the swamp, you think of the greater Washington, D.C. area, which is occupied by Nova and obviously parts of Maryland. That's a problem. That's going to be a problem when the growth of government is reliant upon people for their incomes. More than likely, they are going to lean to the left. The number two issue that I would consider is there definitely seems to be in the Virginia culture something that you would consider the Virginia way. It's the way that you do things in Virginia. It's literally the birthplace of America. I mean, our first five presidents all came from Virginia. And there seems to be this kind of hierarchical, almost aristocratic pathway through Virginia politics. I'm not a native of Virginia. I'm actually went to Liberty University, played college football for the Flames, but I come from the heart of the Midwest. Well, not the heart necessarily, the top coldest part of the Midwest, Minnesota. But in the Midwest culture, it's very much more of this kind of blue collar. When you think of populism, you think of the working, the rural class. You kind of have that kind of. And when I started in politics, it was in Minnesota. You get way more of this like kind of populist driven politics. In Virginia, it's much more difficult to do that way because there's almost kind of like a hierarchical element to it, a very top down element to it. So when you get that within a party system, you have more embedded establishments that I think are harder to break through. And I do think, especially because of Washington, D.C., when there is going to be the ultimate pushback from a certain region, that you would almost have to have the counterbalance that is in this unbelievable support of what the president is doing, which you got more from like the bellwether states, the swing and the strong blue collar kind of areas of the Midwest and stuff. But in Virginia, you don't get that much of a counterbalance. Trump, it was not widely supported throughout the state, and therefore, when you have one section of the state that's in complete resistance, you have to have this huge turnout on the other end that basically turns out in massive support of him, and it just didn't happen. You look at the numbers. I think about 60% of the turnout that voted for Donald Trump turned out to vote for the top of the ticket, Winsome Sears, and that's a terrible turnout for the governor of a state. You need to get a much higher turnout. I mean, if we turned out the state for Winsome Sears like we did for Donald Trump, Winsome Sears would be the governor. But that did not happen. And I think what ultimately happened was the pushback against the Trump agenda, and the Trump administration was far greater than any kind of support for him. And then, therefore, the results ended where they landed, which was a landslide victory for the governor in Abigail Spanberger. The lieutenant governor won. This attorney general, who was just a terrible candidate, ended up defeating the incumbent Jason Miyares. And then you had the House of Delegates have I think it was a 13 swing towards the Democratic side. And here we're landing with the results that we have, which was pretty much an ultimatum.
I heard during that period of Trump's early administration last year that Governor Glenn Youngkin actually, one of the last things he did was give funding from the state for those who were losing their jobs under Doge to be able to stay in their jobs, to stay in Virginia. That was probably a mistake, I'm guessing. And I think that I don't know how significant that was with everything else, but that was certainly a problem with all of this. So
You either are supporting what the president is doing, and you can be critical. Like you can be on an individual level, be critical of some of the ideas or maybe some of the positions of the president. But as a whole, in order to effectively, especially in a state like Virginia, where obviously Trump did not win, but in order to effectively get his base out and still try to maintain the power for the Republicans, you can't almost be resistant to embracing Trump. And what I've seen is sort of like you either are for something or you're against something, correct? And I think many times, like, and I've been saying this in various circles, like people are not going to, we're not going to be there. The belief in total unity is ridiculous. It's a utopian belief system that it's just not going to happen. It's not, we're a broken people we're both followers of Christ. We know that, but a vision, we're moving towards something. You're either for it or you're against it. And if you try to play this middle ground, all that's going to end up happening is you're going to get your butts kicked, like what happened in Virginia in 2025. So we needed to either decide as a party, do we support the president, what he's doing, or is when he's trying to fire basically uproot the swamp? Are we going to support him? Or are we going to kind of say, well, maybe we'll give you a handout and we kind of like some of the stuff, but we kind of don't agree? That completely turns off his strong supporters that want to believe in leaders that are supporting the president. And ultimately, would you rather have the results that would have happened if we had supported him, or do you want the results that we have that happen now? I think we want the former. So I believe it was a poor strategic decision to, in any way, try to not support what the president was doing, especially with Doge.
Tommy, if you can hear me, I wanted to find out what's going on specifically right now. We get a lot of headlines coming out of Virginia regarding how bad it is. We hear about gerrymandering. They're going to defund VMI. I just saw Tim Kaine yesterday wants to rename Arlington House. So give us sort of like the truth. What's actually going on? How bad really is it?
Well, first off, you have HB 1374 and HB 1377 that what they're trying to do to VMI is House Bill 74, I believe, undermines the school's self-governance. And so it's taking the authority from VMI and it's sending it to another school that's like 2.5 miles down the road. Okay, so the big question is why? Like, what's the reason for that? And then 1377 establishes a task force, and basically they're going to decide if they're going to continue to fund VMI. Um, and so instead of our tax money going to a prestigious school that was founded in 1839, supplied soldiers to the Army of Virginia during the Civil War, they're going to defund this prestigious institution, and they're already trying to pass bills for our funding to go back to Planned Parenthood. Now you're allowed to have an abortion up to full term. And I mean, I'm sorry, as a Virginian, which I know I'm up in Philadelphia now, but as a born and raised Virginian, I'd much rather have my tax money going to a prestigious institution like VMI. And I've called a lot of my friends that graduated from VMI, and I'm like, why? What's the reason for this? Because this is a bad move politically. If the governor wants to run for president, and I believe she does, like she's completely done a terrible job at it. And some of the guys that I know that went to VMI and graduated said, "Well, we think it's because we stood against all the garbage that went down the pipe in 2020. We refused to go woke. We didn't buy into the liberal agenda, and we're paying the price for it." And that's the level of pettiness they're at, is the fact that because we didn't, toe the liberal agenda line, they're going to destroy a prestigious institution like VMI. I mean, let that sink in. These are the people running Virginia right now. These are the people that want to run for president. This is that type. They're petty, they're childish, and they're going to destroy Virginia at its core. And again, I mean, there's going to be a tax if you want to get your dog groomed. I believe there's a haircut tax going on. If you want to work out of the gym, they're going to tax you for that. Not to mention the amount of Second Amendment attacks that are going on. You have attacks from owning assault rifles to and Ty, since you're still in Virginia. I believe they're trying to ban anything that has capacity of over 10 rounds, which means all of us will be breaking the law, so to speak. I don't think any law that goes against the Second Amendment or the Constitution is null and void. But according to them, we'll all be criminals. In July when these laws go into effect, they're gonna make laws where you have to store your guns in a safe. Well, for me, I like to sleep next to my gun. That's how I defend my wife and I, and that's how we stay safe. Well, we're not gonna be allowed to do that under this new administration. And so they are fundamentally destroying Virginia at her very core. And what I'm afraid of is this is just the third week she's in office. Can you imagine what Virginia will look like in 4 years? I mean, we might not even be able to save her.
Whether it be Second Amendment rights being infringed upon, the typical assault ban stick. I believe if there's certain kind of semi-automatic weapons, and Tommy would have, if he can hear me, he could clarify that there's some kind of regulation being put on that. Obviously, higher taxes, going back into the regional greenhouse gas initiative, which is obviously the whole environmental movement idea that actually Glenn Youngkin got us out. We're back into that. Governor Spamberger announced that pretty much on day one. Obviously, enshrining abortion rights into the Constitution, abortion up to birth, same-sex marriage amendment up to is going to be enshrined. In case they overturn the overfall decision in the Supreme Court, then it would be legal to do it here in Virginia. You're looking at Voting Rights Act, which I believe you'd have. I don't want to say something that is inaccurate, but your rights to vote would be immediately established once you've completed parole, which is not currently the case. I believe there is a waiting period. Then obviously the redistricting amendment. There's just a plethora of bad ideas.
Let's focus on the redistricting real quick. I mean, what are the chances? What do people think on the ground is going to happen there? Is it going to, because if it's redistricted the way that the Democrats want it to be, that's the end, right?
Are you talking about on the congressional level? Could we get more Republicans elected on the congressional level than on the Democrat
Well, on both levels, I suppose it's going to have an impact, because on the congressional level, it's going to swing blue. But at the same time, I know there's a relationship between the people in the state and that are working on the behalf of the state and those who are working on behalf of the state in the federal government. So that changes the power dynamic too.
There's a few. Okay, so first of all, that there was a decision that struck down the redistricting amendment, saying that it was basically illegal based upon, I think, procedural grounds. Actually, I think it was three different. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just winging this right now. But we're not winging it, but saying it the best that I can. But it was shot down on, I believe, three different places, and the one that they believe will have the most standing to keep it where it actually cannot become legal is on procedural grounds, I believe, because they did a special session right. So in order for it to go on a ballot, there has to be an election between votes in the legislature. So the legislature called a special session. The House and the Senate passed a redistricting amendment to go on the ballot, and then they immediately passed it when session started. I believe there's some kind of procedural problem that they couldn't have called a special session, I believe is what they're saying. And therefore, then they have to wait until after the next election in 2027 to then vote in the 2028 general session on it. So I believe there's a pretty good chance that decision gets upheld. The Tazewell decision in Virginia gets upheld by the Virginia Supreme Court. Now, let's say it doesn't. Let's say that they say that, no, it's legal what they did. Then you have the new maps. I am probably not as nihilistic about the maps long-term as other people are. I think the right and the left have two opposite problems. I think the right tends to never go for the kill. They play it safe. Like I say, they're never fully all in. There's too many that have their foot one place and their foot another place. The left, on the other hand, I think overplays their hand. I think they think sometimes reality is what it really isn't. I think that could be the case with this redistricting map. I've seen how they've redistricted, and possibly in this upcoming election, it could be very beneficial in Virginia for the Democrats. There also could be a rejection of what's happening in the General Assembly, and you could see the Overton window go back the opposite direction. And I definitely could see in the future some of those seats that they're actually thinking, so they're trying to carve in and take a couple of the Republican seats. I think they're actually opening up a couple other seats for Republicans on a different year to take over. So I think long term, I think it actually could work against, and I'm not the only one saying this. Dwayne Yancey, who writes for Cardinal News, he said it. Chaz Nuttycombe, who does State Navigator, which is one of the bigger modeling, statewide modeling projectors, he said it. So because I was thinking it, and I'm like, am I just kind of on my own here that they might be overplaying their hand with this redistricting amendment? But will I ultimately think Probably the Virginia Supreme Court sides with the Tazewell Court, and ultimately, as of now, it stays the same. And then they maybe reconsider in 2 years.
Okay, so that's, I guess, hopeful. It's better than just totally blackpilling on it. Question, and Tommy, if you can hear me, you can
Yeah.
take this
Yeah.
for the future here. Even if the redistricting doesn't take place and this is all struck down, there's still this massive political problem of the Virginia voter. It seems like if you were to profile it, it's a mom in, I don't know, out in Alexandria somewhere who is probably center left, and that like she tends to determine what's going to happen. I know Youngkin was candidating quite a bit up there, trying to get the support of people in those suburban beltway areas, and it's not out in the Shenandoah Valley. Those aren't the people obviously determining this.
Right.
So just in sort of a political sense, what's the hope for Virginia as far as like, if we just get better leadership in the Republican Party, is that going to do it?
We do have to work on our messaging. Okay, that's very important. We need to identify newer people coming in that are going to give us a good, strong message that I think will identify, across the board. But we can talk about the Shenandoah Valley. The voter turnout in the Shenandoah Valley is terrible. If we could get all the gun owners to come out and vote, we would never have to worry about another election in Virginia again. There are so many gun owners who did not vote this time around. It's not funny. And I know gun owners who actually voted Democrat because I don't know. I guess they spend too much time watching CNN and MSNBC, and they for some reason thought that their vote was going to teach Trump a lesson, and so they voted for this. And now they're furious because all their gun rights are being taken away. And so a lot of it has to do with the voters need to be a little smarter. They need to do more research on who the candidates are, and you really need to pray and you need to think before you push the button, because in the end it didn't affect Trump at all. Like he's won. This is his second term. No matter what you do, he's had a full political career, and there's nothing you can do to take that away. And so to vote for Abigail Spanberger when you are a gun owner and you don't want your taxes to go up, I mean, you're not using your head. And so the voters, number one, you got to show up to the polls, and you have to use your head. Like that's the long and the short of it. But again, the internal fighting that goes on in the Republican Party, that also has to stop. Like we need to knock it off. And so I don't know if we just need to mature and grow up. But it can be done. It's just I think more responsibility on the individual needs to be placed, and there needs to be better voter education on who these people are, who we vote for.
The hard thing because it means that at a personal level, there's a virtue and competence problem, perhaps.
Right.
And how do you correct that? How do you stop? I mean, there's really no great political immediate solution for something like that.
Yeah. Well, and Ty might disagree with me. I think he's gonna agree with what I say, but I think our last Republican ticket was not the best ticket, and I don't think they did a very good job campaigning. I felt that a lot of people were confused about what our message was, and I felt there was a lot of laziness. And I don't want to offend my friends that were working on the campaign. All of us in the political world have messed up somewhere along the way, but there definitely was not a go-getter kind of attitude with this last ticket. And so a lot of people did not know what their message was. And that's a lesson that I think the professionals, so to speak, can learn from, that we need better messaging and we need a better work ethic. This campaigning's hard. Like that it's a hard life, and it's not for the faint of heart. So we need go-getters.
Yeah, I noticed too, and I don't want to make too much of this, but many of the candidates on the state level weren't even from Virginia, or like they
Yeah.
obviously Spanberger doesn't, she lives there, but she's I think from New Jersey originally.
Yeah, she's from New Jersey. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and but on the Republican side, I wasn't seeing a whole lot of like people that when you looked at them, you're like, that's a Virginian right there. Like that's
Right.
someone who really represents this state. And I've been curious about that for a while. Like, why is that? How come the sort of born and raised Virginia in their blood kind of people aren't showing up at the top of the state level for political offices, much as I would expect to see.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we destroy our own at the local level. There are some really good people that I know that have been persecuted and destroyed at the local level. And so we eat our own, like we sacrifice ourselves. And when you do that, there's not a whole lot of hope uh, for your state if you are just cutting good, honest people down when they're in the board of supervisors, city council, or even if they're a delegate. Again, a lot of it has to do with what we do to ourselves.
I mean, this is an interesting thought because I've wondered this for a while. Like, even in the conservative areas, if you have locals who are fighting about local things, and someone comes in who's a little bit of an outsider, they don't really have a dog in that fight. They just want to run their business or do whatever they're doing and get ahead a little bit. They will have an advantage because they're not part of the Hatfield family or the McCoy family, and they
Right,
can draw
right.
support from both. And they can then get to the next run on the ladder, and the next
Sure.
run gets them higher and higher. And that's a big problem. Like, and I don't know, again, a virtue problem at the local level. Like, how do you fix that? I don't think there is a top-down solution. Like,
Yeah,
people just have to. It's like the Jerry Clower bit. Like, people just got to get to loving one another. Like, it's
yeah, yeah.
maybe as simple as that. But yeah, Tyler, did you have something to say? You look like you have something to say.
Well, unfortunately, I can't hear Tommy, but I did kind of want to add to what you were saying is in Virginia, kind of what you mentioned, there is a lot of community in political communities. There is a lot of individuals who have been there since the beginning of the founding of this country. I'm not going to name families, but there is families who are currently in elected positions in Virginia that have been there for generations after generations. They have had family members that have either been state party chairmen, and so you see that element in Virginia. But then you kind of mentioned it. There is also a very transient part of Virginia. I mean, Liberty University in the Lynchburg area, when you go
Mhm.
around here, there is tons of individuals that were not born and raised in Virginia. They came to the Lynchburg area to go to Liberty University. They graduated from Liberty University. So there is, and then I think that similar in UVA, similar definitely in Nova because of the occupations up there. So you have this. It is this weird dynamic of, in some ways, it's hard to break into these local institutions because they've been embedded with these families for long periods. But then you have this very transient element, and it does create a very like, from my perspective, Virginia has a different environment than other states I've been to, or even in a state where I'm originally from, Minnesota, where it really is just like these. It's the city folk, and then it's the rural folk, and it's really this. You got the populists, and then you have maybe people that tend to follow more of what would be the suburban institutional kind of policies that put them in a better position as because of their more established professions and corporations, instead of like the small farmer, the small business owner in rural Minnesota. Virginia, there's just so many different dynamics. And I think what ultimately it ends up landing at, on the Republican side at least, is those who have probably known the processes the longest, that have the most established, long-standing power. They are difficult to take out of the most considerable positions of influences. But sometimes, and maybe I'm saying this as an outsider, I think sometimes you either adapt or you die. I actually say this frequently on my social media. And in this current political environment, I think we have to adapt. I mean, we saw what happened in Virginia in this last election. So are we going to die, or are we going to adapt? And so I think we need to start looking at things different. And it might take an outsider or two that maybe has a different perspective on how things are going to maybe turn the pendulum a different direction.
Yeah, that's good. I have one last question, and then I want to get to the questions from the audience. So my last question is there anyone on the horizon, as far as a candidate or a group of people that are candidates, that gets you excited, that you think, okay, these people they understand the dynamic you're talking about, Tyler, and they're here to fix it? Any hope to give us?
Yeah, Ty Turner. Yeah, what's runs Ty?
Like which Which position?
Like I know you can't hear Tommy, but he just named you. He was trying to say Tyler's the guy. So well, really any position. I mean, people need hope, no matter where it comes from.
Okay.
But Tommy's
So-
saying that you're running. So
Yeah, so I might as well go ahead. I am running for a chairmanship position in the 5th district. I mean, remember, we don't know what's going to happen when
Yeah.
it comes to redistricting, but I am going to run for the 5th district chairman position. And my reason for doing it, my vision alone, is to adapt as a party and to figure out how we can grow the movement. I believe our area of the state is the most conservative area of the state of Virginia. You look at it, if you cut Virginia like straight down the middle, we are an extremely red state from the central down to the south. Like a Democrat would never have power. We would control all of the legislature. We would have the governorship, lieutenant, we'd have everything. And we'd be one of the most conservative states in the country. And I think we can utilize that to our advantage. Where you have the greatest concentration of conservatives, why not mobilize them effectively? Why not get them in positions of influences, like on State Central, where you can vote on the party platform, where you can move the Overton window a direction maybe that you don't think it's going right now, that can be a positive move towards the future growth of the conservative movement, not just in Virginia, but in this country. And so my vision is to get a more multi-generational party. I think we have a lot of really, really good young conservatives that specifically are graduating from Liberty University, the largest evangelical university in America. And we have some great minds, some individuals that really see where politics is going. I think conservatism never changes on a fundamental level. We believe in faith, family, and freedom, but how we attack politics has changed. I see someone like J.D. Vance, for example, how he sees like those fundamental issues that really young people care about, whether it be affordability, the immigration crisis. We have an immigration crisis. I'm a son of an immigrant, but my mom came here the right way. If you're illegally here, you have to leave. And therefore, people that are here and people that are heritage Americans that grew up here, that are bred in blood, this is a society that will be cultivated ultimately by them. And we need to really foundationally like dig into that reality. And younger people are wondering, why are we being left behind? Young men, I hear it all the time. I'm going to just go say it. Young white men are like, did we die off? We're not being heard. We're not given a platform. Why not? And what are the issues that are really impacting them? And I just think really getting the younger generation involved, letting their voices be heard, understanding that politics in some ways has changed the dynamics of how we view a plethora of issues, whether it's foreign policy, immigration has changed, and we have to adapt or we're going to die. If we adapt, I actually think we can grow it into a bigger movement. I think conservatives can take back Virginia. I really do. And I think we can be the forerunners in our region of the state because we have such a large concentration of good conservative people.
And John, let me. Can I jump in there? There are a few people I see that I look forward and pray that perhaps the Lord will use them. Down the road. There's a city councilman in Waynesboro. His name's Jim Wood. Super conservative guy, owner of a gun store. And I would love to see one day him run for higher office. I think he would do a great job. And then we do have delegates like Eric Zaire. Eric Zaire is a good moral brother in Christ. That I look forward to see what's in his future. He has a good voting record, and unfortunately, just because you have a good voting record doesn't mean you're necessarily good at the job. But I think he has what I call it. Like he has what it takes to go all the way. And there are many other delegates that just because they're in the minority, we might not recognize them right now because we're getting beat up pretty bad. But there are people out there that the Lord could easily use for Virginia.
good to hear. All right, some questions. Conceptual Clarity says, I think that the elections in Northern Virginia have already been dirty for a while, and that's what makes these bills a lot worse. So invoking the idea that there's funny business going on, and that's contributing to why the Democrats are in the majorities that they're in. Any comments Tyler?
I mean, there's a few things that I have a problem with when it comes to our elections. I think 45 days of early voting is problematic. I don't see the purpose in that. Think it should be a much cleaner process. You maybe allow a week of early voting. I've long had a problem with all the random I realize there's individuals like in the military or people that have disabilities that use the various kind of mail-in methods, but obviously the cleaner you can have that, the better. And plain and simple, when you have an illegal immigration problem, that's problematic. You're going to probably more than likely have fraudulent votes out there. So yeah, I think the election laws should be a little more straightforward, less open, and just the more open they are, the more obvious fraud that can occur, the more straightforward you are, the less likely it would. And I think it's a little too open here in the state of Virginia. So I'd agree. I think he has a valid point.
All right. Earl says for $5, credit to the Democrats. When they get into office, they get to work. Conservatives must be just as proactive and ruthless in pursuing their goals. Think so, Tom?
Yeah. Well, so I have heard through the grapevine that the Democrats are currently at each other's throat in Richmond, and that Governor Spamberger is actually angry that they won a supermajority because now she has to govern all the nutcases. And she wanted to govern people who were more of a moderate Democrat. Because remember, Governor Spamberger wants to be the president of the United States, and I think her chances are gone. And that's because they overreached, and now they have a supermajority. And every time you have a lot of people to manage, the more that will go wrong. And so it is kind of nice to see the Democrats at each other's throats for a change instead of us Republicans. And so I think we just need to wait and see what the next 4 years unfold. Now, yeah, Democrats they do get to work, but when you look at what they want to do, it's different than what the conservatives want to do. Democrats don't stand on our morals, and so we have to defend a lot of true Christian morals, I think, where the Democrats just have to tear it down. And so you have to look at it that way too. Our job, I think, is harder.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's easier to, I think Roger Scruton says this, take something apart, destroy something than it is to actually cultivate and build
Right.
something and preserve it. So, yeah, I think you're right. And the Democrats fighting each other is a very encouraging thing, I
Yeah.
suppose.
No, it is. It is.
Cosmic Treason says, I think we need reformatives, no conservatives. What's there to conserve? We need reform. I hear this a lot, that there's nothing left to conserve with people who are very concerned about these things. I mean, I usually say, look, there's always something to conserve. You're here. You have a family. You have things that you are familiar
Well, I mean, I'd have to say in Virginia, that's exactly what we have to do. We're trying to conserve VMI. Honestly, we have to save Virginia. So, I mean, I think there's definitely a role to play as far as conservatives in Virginia.
both work together. You know, you
Yeah.
build as you try to preserve what has already been built.
Yeah.
But I think that's fundamentally what a conservative is about. But I know that a lot of people have misused that label
Sure.
and tarnished it, and people want
Yeah.
like, and it's one of the things I guess I want to say. Labels aren't going to save us. Like, labels, branding it can be somewhat powerful because symbols can be powerful for people and
Yeah.
stuff, but branding alone, especially if it's like corporate-y, like kind of like we have an innovative new term that's not rooted in anything that has stood the test of time, it's not going to save you. It's not really even about the branding or the words. It's about like the concept behind it. What is the heartbeat of the person who's in office? What are they trying to accomplish? And it's a philosophical question, I suppose. We do need people that are going to conserve what is still being attacked, because that's what the Democrats are doing. They're attacking what's been there. So, so both of those things certainly flow together. That's just my opinion. But Earl, for another $5, thanks, Earl. You're emptying the piggy bank for us today. If Trump wants to gun owners to vote Republican, he needs to stop platforming anti-gunners like Janine Pirro and Kash Patel. I don't know. This is sort of a national question, not particularly a Virginia question, but
it's a good point, though.
It's Tommy says a good point. All right.
I'll make one point on that, though.
Go for it.
because that is even what is happening when it comes to
Right.
state politics. And when I talk about the right is either going this way or that way. Um, I agree with some of that sentiment, but at the same time, I do think the right at sometimes we just need to push forward with a vision. And like for instance, if we believe in the vision of President Donald Trump, trying to undermine it at every possible turn, it just seems like what has happened both of his terms. And at the end of the day, do you believe in what he's doing? Do you think there's a purpose in it? And are you following in the purpose? Or are you going to be undermining? And then at the end of the day, you're going to lose elections in certain states and you're going to lose Congress. And I really just wish all because there is a lot of good ideas that he puts forward. So we just get behind it and we push forward with it and just win
Right.
to a certain extent. It really is that in politics. When you're in the battle, are you winning or are you losing?
Yeah.
And I think at times it's kind of like the right doesn't really want to win. Perhaps they
Right.
didn't play sports enough. But as an ex-athlete, when I got out there in the field, all I ever cared about was, am I getting the better of my opponent? And so I really wish we'd just see the good that Donald Trump is going and really support that vision and try to take advantage of it while he's in office.
And one more thing, because you talked about getting behind our candidates. That's something the Republican Party is terrible at. So a lot of us, we love to nitpick at certain things, and there have been many times we have run very good candidates, and yet there's this faction in the Republican Party because it's not their guy. They're not going to get behind them, and so it's important to realize, yes, everybody's flawed. We're all sinners. Not anyone's going to be perfect, and you have to recognize that and pick and choose what hills you're going to die on.
Yeah, I wrote an article yesterday about the prophetic voice, and I tried to distinguish between, like, for Christians, the prophetic voice and the political voice, and how they can complement each other. But the prophet is someone who comes and says to the rulers and to the people, you need to get your hearts right before God, conform to his law. And the political voice is the one that says, we have a situation that's threatening our way of existence. And for survival, we need to do something very practical. So Paul appealing to Rome, he doesn't
Mhm.
agree with Rome's policies on everything, but he's going to say, I'm going to invoke my citizenship here
Right.
to get out of a bind that I'm in, because I need a better environment for what I'm trying to do.
Right.
And that's what politics is. We're trying to get a better environment for what we're trying to do, which is to go to church, to raise families, to preserve our heritage. And oftentimes I see Republicans wanting to get all abstract, philosophical, and critique as if to apply a prophetic voice all the time. Like, that's the only voice you should have, is where do we not match up to some standard? And I'm more interested in, on the political level, is the guy actually getting wins for us? Like, if, like, to take Kash Patel, like, is he doing things? Is he moving the ball in the direction we want it to go? Or is he kicking it towards our, I
Right.
guess I'm going to soccer here. That's what I played. Is he kicking it in our own net? And if he doesn't agree with me philosophically on everything, but he's actually kicking it in the right direction, I'm much more accommodating to something like that than someone who says all the right things and can't even kick the ball. And maybe Cash isn't the best example of this, but you see my
Sure.
point. So
Right. Right.
I think that's what you're saying is, like, look, we got to win here. We can't just eat ourselves over differences. Those differences are real. We can talk about them, but at the end of the day, we have an enemy that wants to destroy our way of life.
Hmm.
So as Michelle says, the apathetic persons and Christians' failure to vote is very concerning. Christians need clear voices from men like you guys and male leadership in the home to help communicate clearly and lovingly, of course, to their wives.
Yeah.
Allie and Megan Basham have clearly pointed out how many Christian women are succumbing to unhealthy empathy. Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Um, let's see. Why do we eat our own? Why do we eat our own? Is it rhinos in the mix?
Okay. Well, that's what I'm talking. And bless your heart.
Bless your heart, Southern there.
But that's what I'm talking about. So we are so ready to just be like rhinos everywhere, and everywhere you see is rhinos. That's what I'm talking about, eating your own. Now, if there's something that is clearly not of the Republican um, belief, sure, you can call it out. But I don't necessarily go around yelling, rhinos here, rhinos there, rhinos everywhere. because that's why we're losing. And as soon as someone doesn't completely agree with what Tommy Kelley believes, that does not mean they're a rhino, and that word has been thrown around so much in our inner circles that I think it really has destroyed the home team. And so now, I mean, we have socialist communists running Virginia.
Actual rhino is subversive, right? Like the actual one
Yeah,
is going to come in sheep's clothing.
yeah,
Like they're
yeah,
probably not going to be as honest. And then once they
right,
govern, they'll be like, that's the thing I think people don't realize, that these early stages, if they come in
yeah,
and have a disagreement over something, they're probably not as much of a rhino. I
yeah.
mean, it could be, but it's
Well, I mean, just the other day, someone called me up because I'm close to Congressman Ben Klein. He's a good friend of mine, and they said Ben Klein's a rhino, and I was like, what? Like, I get you might not agree with all of his votes, and there was actually a vote that Ty sent to me and said, "Ask Ben why I voted for this," and I'm like, I will, and I haven't yet, Ty, so I will ask him. But Ben Klein is not a rhino. And it's just if he took a certain vote that you don't agree with, that does not make him a rhino. I know Ben. Ben's a conservative. He's a solid dude, and we want him in the Congress. And so I caution people: be careful you label a rhino. It's just like our brothers and sisters. As soon as someone might mess up a little bit, they're ready to say they're not saved, and it's like, whoa, whoa, you don't know where their heart's at. It's the same kind of thing, just on a political level.
So I'm going to go to, I think, the last question we'll do, and I'll pitch it to you, Tyler. It's a very good point there, Tommy. Do you have any good sheriffs that will constitutionally and biblically resist the bad magistrates? So with all the stuff that's going on, Tommy mentioned gun rights being threatened.
Hmm.
Are there sheriffs in the state of Virginia who are going to say, you know what, we're not going along with that. You can keep your guns in our county. What do you think, Tyler?
So have I actually heard anyone? Has anyone specifically said to me that to be the case? No, but do I think more than likely, in probably these more rural communities, would you have good sheriffs that would? I would hope so. I think that's pretty much would be pretty consistent across the country in very rural conservative areas where people do adhere to more conservative values. You're going to have better sheriffs that will combat an out of control government. You saw it during COVID.
Yeah.
You saw in areas of California, and I believe you live in New York, so in your part of New York, where you saw in conservative areas where you had the sheriffs defy what was coming down from the top. So I do believe in the more conservative areas, specifically my area, you would more than likely have bold conservative leadership by the sheriffs. And I would hope so. I mean, because at the end of the day, the constitutional republic is there in place to protect our rights. And therefore, if there's a government that's infringing upon it, it's our duty to fight back. And Second Amendment is a fundamental right. So therefore, if they're infringing on that right, it's our duty to fight back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, Tyler and Tommy, thank you both so much for coming on the podcast. And I appreciate it. I actually have someone already in the chat asking how they can help. So we got Virginians tuning in, and I would just say, pray, do the things you already know, right? Be a good citizen and run for office if it's something that you're interested in. I think too many people sit out and criticize and don't run when they have opportunities to do so, or become a leader in your community in some other way. So that's my advice. God bless, and we'll hopefully see you soon. And if you want to support Tyler, I don't even think there's a website yet, but look out for that. Tyler Turner. I know you're on Facebook, Tyler. So do you have a website or anything, or no?
For my run for chair, no, I do not have anything.
Okay, all right. Well,
but feel free to follow me on Facebook, Ty Turner, and Twitter.
There you go, Ty Turner. All right. God bless, guys. Have a good one.
I appreciate it.
You too.
There's a storm over America today, and that storm is the distortion of American history. America wasn't founded on an idea. America wasn't founded on slavery or by slaves, and America wasn't founded as a city upon a hill. America, the real tangible America, was born in Virginia. That's the America we should emulate. So much of what we think about America comes from Virginia. These early Virginians founded the first elected assembly in 1619, the real 1619 Project. When we think about American culture, we think of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and Patrick Henry. Those Virginians were instrumental in what we think of America today. They established civil liberties in the name of the rights of Englishmen. And much of American culture comes from Virginia. Whether it's music or the military tradition, Virginia is the key to understanding what America is and what America was. That's why we created the 1607 Project. Join us in this journey from 1607 to the present and find out what the real America is all about.